Well, we just finished a great conversation with Kenneth Weiss, our Chief Operating Officer at Maranatha. And hey, if you listen, you'll find out just how much he did not want to work at Maranatha.
But like him, a lot of us have had unconventional journeys to the mission field.
I actually learned a lot about everybody's journey here. Also, Kenneth's been working for Maranatha for 30 years this year, so it was interesting to see how he was impacted by all of this work with Maranatha for the last 3 decades.
In fact, we'll learn how all of us were impacted. So let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome to Inside Mission, a conversation about all things Maranatha, from the work to the people to behind the scenes adventures. I'm Julie Lee and I'm Maranatha's Vice President of Marketing. And today I'm joined by 3 of my colleagues, but I'll have Dustin and Christina introduce themselves first.
Dustin Comm, I'm our communications manager.
And I'm Christina Lloyd, and I'm the Director of Television here at Maranatha.
And our 4th person today is Kenneth Weiss. Kenneth has been with Maranatha for a number of years, first as our Executive Vice President and now as our Chief Operating Officer. And Kenneth, we're going to put you in the hot seat today. We're going to learn a little bit about you.
That's great. What's nice is I do get to do it with the rest of you. So, question and return is fair play.
Today, we're going to learn more about your journey, Kenneth, to Maranatha and some of our journeys too. And we're also going to talk about or share war stories on what it's like to work here, balance work and kids, and especially in a field that requires us to travel the world, sometimes at a moment's notice, along with some other fun stuff. But first, welcome, Kenneth. We're so glad you're here.
Hey, it's nice to be here, and it's
a slow clap.
A slow clap. Okay. And it's fun to, in a sense, talk about some of the behind the scenes pieces of Maranatha, which we don't spend a lot of time talking about very often. Oh, it's easy to say, hey, we have all these project goals in all these places. But, all of us have a little bit of history and personal life, and that's why we're here.
Yep. And I know that you kind of have an interesting origin story. So let's go ahead and start there. I'm going to start with Kenneth. You have lived in a lot of places growing up. Give us kind of a brief background of where you grew up and your childhood.
Sure. I in our family, there's a long history of missions and mission involvement, going back 4, 5, 6 generations. In fact, if you go back that far, some of the very first missionary to go to South America, taking the gospel, is a great uncle of mine. So with that comes a little bit of a genetic process where there's this expectation, hey, when you grow up, what are you going to do for mission, right? And so that hit all the generations. So my dad, he went and he studied theology, and then he became a missionary, and we were assigned in Spain. So that starts to answer your question.
So
I was born in New York.
You were born in okay.
Queens, New York. Yep, I'm a New Yorker. So there you go. And we lived there a little bit, and then at age 6 and a few months, we went to Spain. So it was 1972.
As a mission post.
As a mission post. And in those years, the assignments were 5 years. You would go, communication was hard, so every now and then we'd get a letter and so on. And for me, that was a new country, kind of a new language. We spoke a little bit of Spanish at home because my dad's from Argentina, mom's from Uruguay. And then now you're in Spain and you got to go to school and learn Spanish. So a lot of times people ask, how is it that you know Spanish? Well, that's really how it happened. So then we were there a while, and then I got to become a teenager. I have 2 sisters also. And so the parents said, hey, we really need to get them back into the United States because we'd like, them to go to a secondary school, an Adventist secondary school. So I really resonate with all those places that don't have an Adventist secondary school because primary was the end of the road, and I would have gone to just a regular public
school. You think you would have stayed in Spain had they had a secondary school or in the mission field maybe?
Very possibly, because my parents, normal teenager, you start getting in trouble, and they were worried about sending me to a public school in Spain.
And what type of missions was your family involved with in Spain?
So my dad, that's an interesting question. Back in the 70s, Seventh-day Adventism was going through a shift, especially in Europe. And so Dad got called with about 5 other families and got sent from the General Conference. One family went to Portugal, one family went to Spain, one went to Italy, one went to Greece, and I can't remember where the last one went. Anyway, they were sent by the GC to kind of help inject and bring a little bit of a different philosophy into those countries. So Dad was posted at the Union for the Seventh-day Adventist Church. That was the entity they had for Spain. And so, yeah, he was in charge of, I don't remember, Sabbath school and stewardship and I think the education department and so on. And so they did that across Europe. And so, here's a name from the past. Ted Wilson's dad was the one that instituted that program. And I remember as a little boy, he came visit our house and he did several trips. And wow, the president of the World Church came to our house. That was a big deal. I didn't know anything about church politics or structure. It was just this guy from the United States visit us.
But you went back there recently.
I did.
With your father, which must have been pretty special.
It was. In fact, we went with Dad back to the same school I got in trouble at, which was a
you
school.
kind of glossed over that earlier. You want to go into more detail? No.
Yeah, I could, but then, then my kids find out, and then it comes back to haunt me a little bit. But as often happens in the mission field, you have a little bit of a church compound. And so this building is where the church headquarters was at, and they had primary school was taught in there. And going back there was kind of fun because Dad, he kind of got teary. There's some old people there that remembered him. And we went to the church that's right next to the building, and there's some guy that I didn't recognize, but he said he remembered me from elementary school. So that's always kind of a fun thing. Yeah.
So you moved back to the United States, correct?
We did back in the late 70s.
And so to where? Was that to
We went
Maryland?
back to Tacoma Park, Maryland.
Okay.
That's exactly right. So there, I went to, some of our listeners may know it's a place called Sligo School and then Tacoma Academy for high school and so on. The church headquarters was based there in that part, in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And then a few years later, they moved out of the city. So, yep, that's a brief story in terms of living in other countries and mission field. Now, to answer your question in terms of living in other countries, because most of our family is from South America, we started coming to the U.S. in the late 50s. And so there's a lot of trips to South America, a lot of connections down there as well. So, in fact, my grandfather settled and bought land, a place where real well, real close to where Julie spent time in Bakersfield.
California. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Kenneth and I have that illustrious connection to Bakersfield. No hate.
You guys have a bet
Still
on
have
whether
family
you can
there.
work Bakersfield into this episode?
Yeah, we're going to just try to see how much we can mention Bakersfield in this podcast.
Yeah,
So,
so back to the mission field a little bit. So all those seeds, it's been fun for me or interesting for me because, we're all made up of pieces of our history and our parents and so on. So when I go to the mission field and I see families there, especially our Maranatha families, I really empathize with them because, we were pretty isolated. There weren't any other Americans. Peanut butter, some of you will know about this, was this huge thing, right? Like we'd get peanut butter. We eventually made friends in Spain with some American servicemen. And oh my goodness, we got to go one time for Christmas. We bought peanut butter there at the U.S. base, right? So there's things like that I empathize with our field staff and all missionaries, to be honest. When you live in another country, you have, it's a challenge. And it comes with a blessing, too. right?
You feel like peanut butter's caught on. I feel like
It's
peanut butter's
caught on,
always
yeah.
a thing that people
You-
look for as Americans. But
Totally.
is it now more, you can find it in grocery stores? I can't remember. Do we?
I think
think
it's
so.
pretty
Yeah.
common
Yeah.
these days.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Peanut butter was a big deal. Yeah, go
No.
ahead.
Was your experience as a kid overseas something that when you look back on, well, actually, when you came to the point where you were considering joining a missionary organization, that you were like, oh, I can see myself. I had fond memories of my time
Yeah.
as a childhood, so I could see myself doing that work.
I had fond memories of it, but now you're hitting the beginning of the struggle.
yeah, you did.
In Spain,
yeah.
and then when we came back, I made a decision. There is no way I'm doing this.
Oh,
So, did I enjoy living in Spain? Yes, but it was not. I'm like,
why? Why didn't you want to?
You
Why were you
know,
going to break with tradition? Kenneth?
yeah, that part of it is that you want to be
Different.
different because there's this
Want to
expectation.
be your own person.
Your own person. There's a whole generation there that the only or the careers that seem to be more acceptable within Seventh-day Adventist, you're a teacher, a preacher, a doctor, a missionary. If you did other things, well, it wasn't.
So let's get to that. You
Yeah.
went to Andrews University and you graduated with a degree in,
Economics.
and then you went on to University of California.
Davis.
At Davis?
Yes, and I got a PhD there in economics. Yep.
Yes. And so what were you intending to do with that?
Anything but missions. So, in those days, in the early 90s, Davis was a very good school for doing ag econ, and in those days,
It still
Com-
is.
yeah, it still is. It's still a very good school. Computers were becoming more acceptable, and modeling was a big deal. And so I love technology, and so a group of us, we started developing some cutting edge modeling. We got to do all kinds of forecasting. Some of the work that some of us got to do is used even now in the Chicago Board of Trade. They do forecasting for prices, and so those were good years. In fact, a friend of mine and I, we put money into a company maybe you all don't even know, called Netscape. Those were the days that everybody was starting a tech company and it would go public. So we had all kinds of aspirations to do things like that.
So maybe like a startup type of thing. That's what you're
A startup.
intending? Or
Oh, no
teach
question.
Or nothing?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. There was that. Because of the background in agriculture and economics, I also had an interest in politics and in government. I had a nice offer from the U.S. government to negotiate treaties and trade, and nowadays, everybody knows about tariffs. Well, back then, tariffs weren't a big deal, but it would have been now. There's something called a general agreement on tariffs and trade, and that's what the president fiddles with and sets the different rates. So we did a lot of work on that, and we kind of modeled it, how it would impact the economy. And so there was demand for that in Washington. So I had an offer to go be involved in that. And then you could also work at different embassies. And anyway, it was tempting.
Fun fact, Kenneth's connection to Bakersfield, California, where I grew up, is that, number 2 mention of Bakersfield, is that Kenneth's grandfather owned cattle, correct? So that's kind of the connection to I'm assuming that's a connection to the agriculture. And
Totally. As a kid, my parents, and I'm purposely glossing over this, the challenges of raising me were significant enough that school would finish on Friday, and on Sunday I was in an airplane and I got sent to the ranch in Bakersfield.
You worked with at the
Before
ranch.
mentioned at the ranch, okay. And we had a beef cattle ranch. We produced replacement calves for dairies. Those that listen to us and know about dairies will know what those are. And then we also did beef for the LA basin. We produced a lot of kosher beef also for the Jewish population there. So yes, that led to interest and understanding in agriculture. And here's what's interesting. That knowledge, if I were to pick a theme, right, this is all about how often God has acted in my life and shifted my direction to be, used by him. And of course I have a choice in it, but some of those actions were very, very direct. Does a kid in high school really want to go to a beef cattle ranch and shovel manure and so on? Well, now, as I'm living in the future, well, it turns out we have a lot of Maranatha supporters that are into agriculture. I have no problem talking to them. I know about farming. I know about plowing. I know all of that. And that's been very helpful, actually. So it's kind of cool. That spins to why and how in the world would I end up at Maranatha,
Well,
right?
yeah,
But
let's
I
get
know
to
you're
that.
dancing around that
Yes,
question.
let's get to that because this is the fun part of the story.
Okay,
Tell us
it's
when,
public confession
what
time.
year was it, and what was this call?
Again, no interest in Maranatha. I attend the Seventh-day Adventist Church here in Sacramento. It's called the Carmichael Church. And Don Noble, the president of Maranatha, even now, he was president then, he also goes to church there. Yet he travels a lot. So it's not like we cross paths every Sabbath.
And it's a fairly large church.
It's a large church, probably a couple thousand members. For example, Dustin, I remember seeing Dustin. He was just a high school kid, and I knew your parents more because, we were just a little bit older. So one Sabbath, this must have been approximately fall of 95. So I'm just about done with my dissertation at that point. There's still work. I have to write it. And when you do a PhD in economics, you have to extend economic theory a little bit. You have to add to the knowledge base. So I had that part done, but I didn't have my modeling and my data. It wasn't working. So was at church, and Don came by and he said, "Hey, Kenneth, I'm wondering if you'll come by and talk a little bit about Maranatha. And, I'm looking for somebody to come and work here." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, why not?" Just polite conversation. He said, "How about Monday?" I'm like, "Sure, Monday." He picked a time, probably 9, 10 in the morning. Okay, no problem. So the weekend kind of goes on. On Sunday, a really good friend of mine, Chris Wolf, and we used to do a lot of mountain biking. Like, "Hey, Ken, tomorrow let's go mountain biking because I found a new trail up at Tahoe." I'm like, "Oh, cool. There's this guy at church. He wants me to come by and learn a little bit about the organization." He's like, "Oh, you're not going there, so why waste your time and waste his time?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're right."
And cut into the mountain biking time.
Yeah, exactly.
Wasn't it actually kind of almost a job interview, or no? Was it?
Well, Don says I knew it was a job interview, so we're going to leave it
dispute.
real vague
It's
as a
disputed.
disputed fact, but I knew what he was saying. Truly, and I don't mean to be disrespectful for it, I had zero interest. Like Maranatha, what? Are you kidding? No, I got so many other options. I can run with the startup that a few of us are working on. I can go back to Washington. I got all kinds. So no.
You were at a crossroads, though, right? I mean, in the
Totally.
next few months, you would have been pursuing something.
I would have been
Yeah.
pursuing something, certainly within 6 months. So we went mountain biking.
Was it a good ride?
It was a great ride.
Did you even tell him you weren't coming?
No, because to be honest, right, in the job search field, if you blow off the interview,
That's the end.
you're done.
the answer,
You've signaled pretty strongly that you're not going to do it. So fast forward some time, and some months go by, and Don. So this mountain bike event would have been sometime spring or summer. So in the fall again, we cross paths, and Don says, "Hey, you blew off the job interview." I'm like, "I didn't have a job interview with you. You just said you wanted me to come by and ask about Maranatha." I'm like, "Come on." So he insisted, right? Which is okay. Once you know Don, you know that is not how we function. That's not how he functions. For some reason, Don felt to push it one more time. I said, "Okay, I'll come by. I'll talk to you about Maranatha. But I already have things." He says, just come by and talk a little bit." I said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll go by. And then we set the same time. That's the irony of it, is Monday at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. So Sunday came, and I was talking to Brenda, my wife, and I said, I got to go do this thing. So she said, well, why don't you treat it seriously? Just go do it. So there's no push or anything. Because I had already kind of made up my mind. So it wasn't like, she said, just be polite, go do it. So I sat down and I wrote a couple of pages of tough questions that I'm like, yeah, I'm going to show this guy. So I'm going to stump him with questions. How's it structured? What are the finances? How do you make decisions? Why would you? Anyway, all that. So I did. I went to the interview. And I had a really nice time with Don. And he answered all the questions. And at the end, he's like, you know what? You interviewed me more than I interviewed you, right? And I'm like, well, you told me you wanted me to come by and find out. Here's where it gets interesting. So I left, and he said, hey, I'm interested in you coming to work here. I'm like, oh, brother, well, I don't know. So I go home, and that was the biggest battle I've had with God. And it started that very night. I don't talk about it very much. I got no sleep, really, for about 30 days. That tells you I can be pretty stubborn. I twist and turn, and it was completely God saying, you really need to consider this. And I'm like, well, why? Why can't you use me in this other position? I could be a great negotiator. I can represent you, I can do all of it. No, on and on. There's a struggle, right? But the peace came in right away. So I accepted the position, and now we're going on 30 years. Not one regret. I still see some of my professors and all of that. All that knowledge is actually really useful. Now it's called data science, econometrics. And we were doing some fun stuff that now is becoming AI. We didn't call it AI. It's some fun Bayesian statistics stuff. So anyway, it's kind of cool how God completely swung me a different way.
Were your parents pleased that you were going into
just the
No, they
opposite.
weren't. Oh, they wanted you to break the tradition. Yeah.
So, good question on my parents. My dad, very much in favor of Maranatha, but not my mom. And some of you knew my mom, very strong, opinionated person. She did not like the fact that her favorite and only
golden
son
child
would go, that would go to this Maranatha. So first convention they went to, she went right up to Don. He's never met her, mind you. One goes right up to Don Noble and says, when, I kid you not, see whose mom has done this, when are you going to fire my son? Because he's not supposed to be there working. And it wasn't, just to be clear, it wasn't mom's pressure to not come work to Maranatha, because I didn't always check with my parents' career choices on. So it was just like, that was a lesser choice.
You just had different ideas for you.
Different ideas, yeah. Now, many years later, probably 20, 25 years later, she said, yeah, Kenneth, I think you probably made the right choice, right? So it took a while. So
how do you think your life would have been different? Do you ever think about that? Like if you would have pursued working in DC?
I mean, you don't know, right? It is such a privilege to be here. I understand, looking back, how God guided. And time after time, when you make a decision or when you see God set things aside, and the organization moves forward, there's additional confirmation. I think God can take any one of us with whatever skill set, because my skill set would not be one that you would say, oh, bring that person over to Maranatha. And he can use us. So,
well, I think that's a question that we get a lot is, so what, like, especially with young people that are looking forward into their careers, like what major should I do to, become a missionary or to work for Maranatha?
Or how did you get this job?
Like, how'd you get this job? And I think that story for each person is a little bit different. I don't know that there's this track that's like, okay, you do this degree and then you get this internship and then you will end up at Maranatha. And I think that's the case for a lot of us that are here. It's a very unconventional path.
Yeah, I was going to ask each of you kind of briefly, how did you come to Maranatha? And I know from just knowing both of you, Christina and Dustin, it wasn't some life journey where you had a dream to work for a missions organization. But Dustin, I'll start with you.
I will say actually that when I was at Pacific Union College, I was a theology major and a TV and film production major. And in thinking about why I was doing theology, one of the main reasons would be to become a pastor, which I did for a few years. But I also had this idea, just this vague idea, like, oh, I could work for like a parachurch, organization, a nonprofit ministry of some kind. But that never really materialized. It didn't really, I was able to, blessed to be hired out of college at one of our conferences to be a pastor, and didn't really think of like working for just a, ministry after that. Did a bunch of things in my career, insurance and financial services, worked with homeless youth for a couple of years, was on the radio and helped produce shows on the radio for a short amount of time in Denver, Colorado, worked at a nonprofit media company. So lots of different things that I've been able to gain a lot of valuable experience from sales to marketing to just interpersonal, getting to know people and what motivates them and how to get the most out of people.
You worked as a producer too, right? For videos or films or?
Yeah. So the nonprofit media company that I was at, I was a producer for a lot of short films and for just various different creative projects, which was a lot of fun. Also got into, I do social media here at Maranatha and did extensive social media advertising for that company as well. So got a lot of great experience there.
And then Dustin crossed paths with me.
Well, exactly. See, that's what's one common element, I think, of most of our staff in the organization. There's been, it's not like they set out to, hey, I'm going to go work for that organization. It's been God moving things in your life and circumstance, I think, for all of us to get us here.
And if I'm transparent, I was floundering for years, and trying to find what is the niche, what is it that God wants me to do. Had a great experience as a pastor, but I could tell because it was such a good experience and I still felt like it wasn't exactly where God wanted me to be, that I needed to keep digging and keep searching, and did a lot of soul searching, a lot of prayer, a lot of just intentional kind of pleading with God really to show me what that might be and what I was going to be able to bring for him to use. And yeah, I finally kind of figured it out. God was able to like put in front of me, like, communications is your thing, So to answer my question to you, I probably would have done a communications degree looking back on it, but also I would answer similarly to you. I mean, the experience I have, the education I have is aiding me in this current position as well. So not something that I would necessarily do differently, but I am communications. I love it. It brings me a lot of joy, makes me feel alive to be able to, especially at Maranatha, we have so many different mediums that we communicate in. So it's just a great mix, and it's always exciting, to create things out of nothing. Basically, you show up on one of these trips. We've talked about it in one of our past episodes. You have to create this story that's not going to exist unless you do the work to do interviews and craft this story. So, brings me so much fulfillment now. You're a great boss, Julie. Just want to put that out there.
Oh, well,
you're a huge part of it.
Yeah, you are a great boss.
But I think, in all seriousness, I think that's, what keeps a lot of us here is you work alongside people that have the same vision and mission and the same desire for excellence in what we're doing. You want to make sure that what we're communicating is just excellence. We're not just putting stuff together, we're actually taking time to plan. And I think we feel an extra sense of responsibility because we're working with donor dollars. You're not just selling cheeseburgers and selling a product. You're trying to help people and get people involved and inspired through the process as well.
We're trying to promote a mission. Mm-hmm. But Dustin was somebody that I had long heard of because I also graduated from Pacific Union College or PUC, and my husband worked there, and he would tell me about this student who was just awesome, excellent basketball player, excellent student leader, had started the first podcast at PUC, and I know we met during once before that, but I ran into him at a communications conference and we started talking. And I think Dustin was looking for something different. And I think it took a little bit, right? Did it take a year or two before the right timing came along and we reached out to each other and he applied for a position and we're so lucky to have him here. So, things like that happen, but other people, they just follow a boyfriend into the mission field, right?
That is
I was going to say, there's like a pattern here. Nobody intended to come here initially, right?
No, and I think even similar to you, I was following a boyfriend, on a mission experience. He had an internship in India, and it was supposed to be 3 months. We're going to do 3 months there, and that was it. And it will be 21 years in a few months, or in a few weeks. So, yeah, you just never know.
An internship to turn into a full-time job.
Exactly.
You spent 5 years in India, was it?
Almost 3 years in India, and then moved and transitioned to the headquarters here, and just did not imagine that it would be a career. But you never know what things are going to turn into. So
everybody's a career missionary here. You just do it in little bursts of time, every time, many times a year, right? You go out and you do it. Now you get to do it from here. It's kind of cool. One of the things that is a fun pattern that I've been able to watch here at Maranatha is it seems like one of the things that holds people here with so many different backgrounds that they come in is the ability to be in your position and make such an impact. Like today, we happens to be a Tuesday where we have staff meeting on Tuesdays. Dustin, you did a presentation on social media and Facebook and so on. Well, if you were to total up just the number of people that even a few seconds was enough to create an image for them to watch something that you or the department or whoever, that's a lot of people being reached and touched. And so that is what brings, I think, a lot of us the value and why we're here, right? What keeps us here? Because Julie, how long have you been here at this point?
I think 17 or 18 years, I'm not sure, but broken up into two different times that I came back.
And Dustin, you'd said
8 years, almost 8 years.
See, that's awesome. And we just heard Christina's, right? And so that's pretty awesome. We got over 50 years here.
So speaking of jobs, Kenneth, you started off as a vice president and then you became, a few years ago, chief operating officer. Tell us what that is.
It's a slight title adjustment. I think in terms of like day-to-day job responsibilities, they haven't shifted that much. What is happening is as Don adjusts a little bit the different areas that he focuses on, he's trying to give me more experience into looking at different areas. And so as chief operating officer, from a technical definition perspective, you're supposed to, be responsible for all the operations of the organization. Fortunately, we have multiple people like all of you around in this circle that are very capable, experienced, and can make, really good decisions and move the company forward. So at the end of the day, I do get to spend the privilege of spending time with donors and with board members. And sometimes there are trouble areas that if I can get involved a little bit and help, precipitate some decisions, it can help smooth things over. We are at a point in history and in the history of the organization where our engagement and effectiveness has to happen through a lot of coordination with the Seventh-day Adventist Church, who gets the bulk of our projects. And so that has actually ramped up in a sense in the amount of time that it takes. Because from a donor perspective, and you mentioned it earlier, the expectation is that we're going to do the best job we possibly can with every dollar that we get. Absolutely. Those are nice words to say, but how do you really do it? So if you combined donors or one donor and you build a church or a school, how do you ensure that every single one of those gets used to the best it can forever, right? Like as an organization, we're kind of held to a standard of batting 1,000 every time, every project. Sometimes people will go back and they'll say, hey, we worked in a church 30 years ago and it's falling apart and hasn't been maintained. And what are you going to do about it? Actual story. Well, of course we're not there, right? You all know that. We're not there to keep it up, and leadership may be an issue. So we have to go to the church and the leadership and we say, hey, what's going on in this part of the world? So that's a piece of what, we get involved in, more and more because of the expectations. And now some of the other pieces, and all of you are involved in this, the effort of transparency and just the availability of data is such that people can go at any time, anywhere in the world. People can go to any website and see pictures, and now they want to see pictures and they want to see updates, and I went on this project. So all of that requires us to work very closely with the church to have success, right, and maintain it. So that takes, that's some of the things we do.
Yeah,
takes
and
a little more time.
A lot of the places that we work, of course, speak Spanish, and then our work in Brazil is Portuguese, and you've adapted quite well to speaking and understanding Portuguese, but it kind of, again, goes back to your role, and maybe Don was looking for somebody who spoke Spanish. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he was, but it's just that gift of language and relationships has been critical to the work that you do now.
Yeah, and to be honest, and I mean this truly, it is, if you open yourself to God leading you, it happens. Every single morning I have that. It's a prayer I pray every morning. Please use me the best possible way you can. And I find that even you mentioned language and translation. I do some of that for Maranatha conventions, for example. People always ask, oh, how do you do it? The answer really is you ask God to give you those words. Because any of you that have used multiple languages, in your head, there's this little dictionary that pops up, and which word do you choose, right? If you don't get the right set of words that comes up, who does that? I think that's God that helps guide your mind, right? And then, sure, you get better at it, of course, but that is a big piece of what, in my relationship with God, I have to ask Him for every single decision. That's from which country we work in to every conversation. I pray every week before staff meeting. I have a prayer. I'm like, okay, let's cover the topics. And sometimes they go well and sometimes they don't, but that's life, right?
Great translator, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
Interpreter.
I was going to say.
That wasn't the point.
No, seriously, if you
It's-
haven't seen him translate.
It is very fun to watch, actually. You do a great job.
Who's the hardest person you've ever had to translate?
Who's the hardest?
Yeah. Can we all guess?
Bar
I have
none.
some
It's my good friend Aldo Joel from Cuba.
That would be my guess.
He's tough.
A mile a minute.
Yeah.
He speaks so fast, but you keep up with him, and I love how you match the person's
Yes.
energy, too.
Yes.
Thank you. That's a big, again, it's a praise the Lord, right? So He uses us. That's the point. That's why we're all here.
So we're gonna take a little break from this conversation and go into something that we are doing called rapid fire questions, where I'm just gonna ask you a series of questions, quick.
Is it just to me or everybody?
Just to you for now.
Oh, man,
just questions,
okay.
and we're gonna ask you, and you don't even have to explain. You just answer these and go. If you really
Wow,
want
you
to
didn't tell me
explain it,
this
you
was
I
coming.
didn't. It's called the surprise rapid fire
Surprise,
questions.
okay.
So, there's $1 million prize at the end if you get them all right.
Perfect,
Just kidding.
okay.
It's not trivia. Okay, so here we go. Favorite Maranatha country to visit?
Oh my! You would start that one.
That's an easy one.
Okay, favorite country to visit. In terms of shock value and all of that, and for me, for my brain, was India, just because I've been there many, many other times, so I don't necessarily rank it that again. But oh my goodness, first time in India, it's like boom. I'm sure that may have been
agree.
the
Yeah,
same thing with you.
100% agree.
It's just you walk in and you're like, there's 1 billion people here, and their brains do not fire the same way as mine at all. You go to Brazil, they kind of do, right? You can just, but not there.
Just stepping into an ocean of people.
It's like
colors and scents. And
Yep.
Okay.
Overload.
Agreed.
Sorry, that wasn't real.
That's
real.
okay. That's okay. Your must-have snack when traveling.
Ooh, Cheetos, Mountain Dew.
Oh, Kenneth. Oh, sorry. No judgment. No judgment.
There's no judgment there.
That wasn't judgment. Okay. Most dangerous place you've ever visited for work.
You know, in terms of physical danger, we don't go to too many places that there's physical danger. There have been times that you're like, this isn't too safe, and we get out. We were one time in Mozambique, and there was we were at a church dedication, and a mob gathered that did not want that service to go forward. Literally, we had to be whisked away in vehicles, and away we went. And it was not good. So sometimes there's controversy. Like, we do get to work at the nexus of the great controversy between good and evil, and our projects are often the focus of that. And that could be a whole other podcast for us about where we see God working on some of these things. But yeah, that's probably like the most dangerous, because like, hey, we got to get everybody out. Otherwise, and it did get a little bit violent after.
Best airport in your opinion?
In terms of familiarity, for me, I would say the Houston airport, but that has to be.
Is it a nice airport?
It has everything, but it's more
It's his
familiarity.
favorite.
It's a giant airport.
Okay, I don't know. I don't think I've ever been.
I don't know. I mean, it's so fun. We've been to some crazy airports in the last 30 years, flying into airports where it's just literally.
I was going to ask worst airport, but I didn't know if that was very politically
I don't know if
correct,
it's the worst airport. We've been to airports where you fly in and there's nobody there.
No airport,
There's no airport place, especially in Africa, right? There's nobody to, like, you're just locked in the airport fence, and you got to make phone calls and get out.
Christina Dustin, best airport? Breaking rapid fire rules, but
Oh man, I have a fondness for the Amsterdam.
Me
I was
too.
going to say
Yeah.
Amsterdam.
Me
But
too.
you know what, Kenneth? We're Delta people, so we go
Oh,
through
okay, very
Amsterdam.
good.
United, what do you do? Frankfurt?
Yeah, Frankfurt would be. So there's one quick story about flights and airplanes, just because people find this stuff interesting. We were doing some projects throughout the whole country of Cuba, in the early days of our working there, where we've rebuilt and refurbished every church. So we were working towards the east, and so we chartered a helicopter, and this is Cuba now, and the only way to charter a helicopter is basically they only have military helicopters. An old, awful, oil-burning, loose bolts Russian helicopter, which is kind of intriguing on its own. So we were coming in on Sabbath for a dedication. And this is a big helicopter. There's 18, 20 people in it. So as we're coming in for landing, unfortunately, all these light roofs blew off of like half the town because the helicopter's coming. And there's this visual of a guy sitting on his couch in his living room as we're landing. He looks up.
Oh.
And I know we're not on video. There is video, but like there's this helicopter. You sit there reading the paper, looking up. It's just, we bought roof sheeting for everybody and replaced the roofs. It was unfortunate. But anyway, that's crazy flight stuff.
You've been to a lot of countries. I don't know if you have a number off the top of your head.
For Maranatha?
Just in general.
Just in general.
Life.
I don't know, probably close to 100. I don't have it off. I know there are these apps that'll help you track it. So it's probably close to that. I don't think it's over that.
Country that's on your bucket list to visit for your personal travel.
Yes, I got lots of those. So
Just
I
one,
have,
Kenneth.
oh, man. Okay. Australia, New Zealand. I know it's not
okay,
just
you haven't
one
been
country,
there
it's
before.
multiple.
Okay.
it would knock out a couple of things. I want to make it to every continent, and I'm missing that continent and Antarctica.
Well, you heard that here, people. Send
I
us a request
know.
from Australia or New Zealand.
Projects in New Zealand coming up.
Well, this related country that's on your bucket list to help for Maranatha.
Yeah. You know what? There's a piece of me that really hopes that someday we can effectively work in the Middle East. In some of those countries, I find them fascinating. I like Middle Eastern food. I like hummus and pita and all that type of food. But there are huge swaths of, the planet that we've not been able to work because it's not safe, or, philosophically we can't work there as Americans, and it'd be, I could pick any number of them, but Saudi Arabia is intriguing to me. All those countries are.
Worst part of your job?
Worst part of the job. There are times where you have to have difficult conversations with people. And I think that's probably everybody. But I always like to look for the silver lining. If you can have a difficult conversation with somebody and then reach a better outcome for everybody, okay. So sometimes you have to let people go. Sometimes you have to make corrections in what they're doing. Often people are meaning to do something well and it goes sideways. And those are difficult conversations because they're doing the best they can and then it doesn't work, right? And so those are not so much fun because you're like, oh, and this didn't happen, but Dustin, yeah, I understand he did that, but it went sideways, right? So there it is. Nothing's happened with Dustin.
Public
Dustin.
on the podcast.
No.
We'll do anything for ratings. No. And best part of your job?
Best part of the job is when you can go to a place that is in dire need of a school, a church, or a well, and you can say, we're going to do it. Yet there's this palpable energy that is a huge mixture of all of this. There's joy. You see people like break down in tears. You see people start saying, oh my goodness, I just got my prayer answered. There's this, it's kind of like all these things come together when this kind of says, oh wow, it's going to happen. It's really cool. It's almost like you get a little glimpse of what heaven will be like, where everybody's like, wow, this is it. It's going to get solved. That's my favorite part of the job.
Are we still in the rapid fire, or can I
Sure,
ask you
go
a question?
for it. You can do whatever you want.
Have you ever had someone maybe had an unexpected reaction, maybe because they're guarded about it, or maybe they've been promised something by someone else in the past, and so they're like not as excited as you would expect?
Yeah, no, we've had all kinds of stories of, when you have to say no, it's really hard. I mean, we at times have told a story. We can do it another time here too. You go to a congregation and you say, we can't do it, and they break down in tears or whatever. And it's really tough. Those are hard.
Doesn't Dawn have a story like that? And I'm guessing,
yeah,
was it
we
in
were
Cuba
both
where
together.
people were
Yeah, in
wailing?
Cuba, they were wailing. We were
Cardenas, you
both
said
up
no.
front in
Cardenas?
Cardenas.
Oh.
That's exactly
I
right.
think he did tell that story on the episode that, if you want to go back and listen, I don't remember which episode number it is, but I think he tells that story.
Yes, he tells that story because
Pretty dramatic.
It was such a poignant moment it shocked both of us because I was standing there with him translating, and we never intended to stop there. And it's like, oh man. So I'll give you a different example, which is kind of the flip side of that same coin. One time in Kajiado, Kenya, which is where we built a girls' rescue campus. In order for that campus to come together and us really invest and do what we did, they had to have water. And so every geologist and study that had been done was no water, no water, no water. So we said, let's just drill and see what happens, because there's this very tiny, small chance that it'll happen. It's one of those things you will never forget. You're standing there, the drilling machine starts drilling, and all the Kajiado girls are certain, you see it, that they're going to get water. And those of us, the skeptical ones, are like, man, this is going to be fun to try to explain when we don't get water. I mean, literally, like in my head, I'm already thinking of how do we spin it. That's a cool little thing to visit in your head about faith and no faith, right? So that's another favorite moment because it helps focus us, right? Like, oh man,
I was there at that.
yes, you were. That's right. I forgot.
When it comes to the mission of Maranatha, there is more than one way to get involved. You can jump right in with both feet by going on a mission trip. You can organize your own with Maranatha's help, or join a project that we've already organized. There are no limitations, and anyone can serve. You can choose to give by making a donation to parts of the mission that inspire you most. From projects in specific countries to programs like Water, the $10 Church, or the One Day Church, every dollar you give goes where you want to help. As a self-supporting organization, Maranatha's work relies on the generosity of all our donors to operate. Keep up to date with all the good that is taking place around the world by subscribing to our emails and our magazine, or watch Maranatha Mission Stories, our weekly television program, and any of the hundreds of videos on our website and Maranatha Channel app. Follow us day to day on our social media accounts and watch short videos or browse photos straight from the mission field. Most importantly, you can pray. Pray for the safe travel of our team around the world, the volunteers, the donors who give so fully to those in need. Pray for wisdom as we aim to transform lives in the field and right here at home. And pray for faith, love, and support for this work, this mission, for Maranatha. Jesus, come soon.
Well, Christina, best and worst parts of your job?
I think the ability to travel and get exposure to parts of the world in a way that people generally don't. You know, if you say, oh, I went to Africa, maybe people went on a safari and they saw some cool animals, maybe saw some monuments, but we really get down to the grassroots level and get to see what the culture is really like. And I think that's just a really neat aspect of what we do. And then to be able to communicate that to people that are not going to have that experience. So it's a big responsibility to be able to say, hey, this is what it's like, and this is why I think you should be involved with us. But alongside with that, it can also be overwhelming because you see such need, and we can only do so much. And so I think staying focused in what we're doing is helping people. It may not help every single person that we encounter, but you can't just get overwhelmed and do nothing. You have to do something. So I think that it could be really easy to get overwhelmed and just kind of get in the fetal position and be like, it's too much. But
I was wondering if you guys have ever felt that, because I remember feeling that. When I went to India, that was a huge thing to see some of the levels of poverty that you see. But specifically, there was a time when we were in Sao Tome, and I happened upon a lady who was giving worship out of her front yard. It was just dirt and concrete, and she had no legs, and she had lost them in an infection, but she was doing this thing, and then also met all these children who were there who were had just like sores on them, and they were just really difficult, challenging living conditions. And I remember feeling even more overwhelmed than when I was in India, and feeling overwhelmed at myself for being selfish, because I felt like right before I'd come, I was obsessing on which rug to buy for my living room. And in that moment, the memories of that obsession with commerce and decorating my house came on so strongly. And I was so angry and ashamed of myself for worrying about something like that, when then there's just such basic need in other parts of the world, and also feeling completely helpless of how to fix it. And it took a while for me to shake off. I don't know if you've ever had that, Dustin? Or
Yeah, Kenneth and I were in Cuba a few years ago and talking to some of the folks there that were really struggling with the economic crisis there. Not a lot of food, not a lot of hygiene products. I mean, just really tough situation. And yet we're trying to help where we can and bring in some supplies. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, well, this is only going to go so far, but then just thinking like every little bit that we can do is helping, and it's providing a little bit even more than that, which is hope in this situation. So, but yeah, I definitely remember just thinking something big is going to have to happen for it to really change all the way across the island. But it's been beautiful that we've been able to do what we can to help. We've been able to send, I don't remember, more than 10 shipping containers of,
Oh yeah,
of aid.
I think we're at 17 and 18 now. Yep.
So, every little bit has been able to help provide maybe a little more hope just to get them a little bit further down the road.
I remember
Anyway.
watching the stories that you guys produced out of that, and you see parents that are like, their kids are hungry and they can't give their kids food. And I remember the day I watched that, my kids were complaining about some food that we had for dinner, and I was like, I lost it on them. Because I'm like, how can we be like this? We can't be like this. And so you can't really experience that even secondhand. I wasn't there, but you can't experience that and have it not impact your life here at home. And I don't know if you guys have had similar experiences, and how does that impact how you live your life back here?
I've definitely had that conversation with my kids for sure. They're pretty good eaters, but yeah, there's definitely been moments where I'm like, guys, I literally just came back from this place, and here's what they had to eat. And yeah.
I mean, it's you're hitting on two, I think, important ideas. I think all of us struggle with that as employees. And then you want to, because you know that what's happening there is this realignment in values and what's important. And you want that for your kids too, right? And that's often a struggle all of us face. You go on these trips and you see all of this, and you get back home, it's like, I want this, or there's a battle over something, or why can't I have the latest iPhone, or whatever the context is. It can be tough.
But I also feel like, I mean, all of us here are parents, and we've all had the opportunity to, we've all taken our children on mission trips. And I don't know about you folks, but I know for me, I do think it changed them. Not saying they're perfect. I mean, we all still want stuff because that's kind of our culture, but definitely different in that an appreciation of what they have, but also understanding that there's things in the world that need to be fixed, and we can be part of helping each other with that, and not asking for as many things. And I think that's what I appreciate about Maranatha too, is that they are kind of trying to make sure that when you work for Maranatha, they understand that we are traveling, we are being pulled away from our family, and yet I know that we want to, Kenneth, especially as a father too, you want to make sure that we are kind of bringing our family into to understand the mission. And I feel like that's been successful for my family, at least. Like they all understand that this is an important mission that I work for, and they appreciate it and respect it and are very generous with me to go out and do the work. I don't know. I feel like it's probably the same with
I think
all
it's
of
been
you.
helpful for me, and probably for us on the media team, to be able to have something we can show them when we get back, whenever our episode is done. When you travel, sometimes you don't really have anything to show for it yet. You'll be able to say, hey guys, all these churches came out of this trip I just went on. But for us, we're able to actually have them sit down, and we do a lot of times, especially on trips that I've been on and produced the stories for. I'll be like, hey guys, I was gone 10 days a few months ago, like this is why, and they get to see, and that also plays into them, their worldview being expanded. Even if they haven't visited that country, they can see like, yeah, things are different there. Things are different here at home. And like you said, there are issues around the world that I need to acknowledge and be aware of and make a difference in. So, yeah.
I think a lot of the kids from Maranatha families, the trajectory of their lives have been impacted really by these projects, or certainly the exposure that they've gotten from the parents being involved and the whole idea of service. I think it really has. I mean, for my 3 kids, that's the case. I mean, one of them, she's now well on her way to being a doctor. So I know that work there. The others are still on their way deciding, right? And your kids are a little bit younger, but you start seeing it. I mean, I see it. At first they don't know anything, And then it shows up in little words. It shows up in choices. It's part of the blessing I think we get from working here. Not a monetary blessing, but it is.
Yeah, they all
Agreed.
know that service is a big part of the family culture expectation.
And I think that it's not just service abroad. It's how do we implement that here within our own community, our own church communities, our school communities, those types of things.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you folks about that. After this many years of serving abroad or seeing missions abroad, how do you feel that's impacted the way you serve here back at home, or how you interact with your faith at home?
I think one of the things that we noticed is the importance of lay leadership particularly in churches abroad. A lot of our churches here in the United States, we're blessed to have a pastoral staff and all of these resources to accomplish ministry. But in a lot of places, ministry does not happen unless the actual members get involved. They're the ones running their churches.
Yeah, I'll see the pastor once every 6 months.
Yeah. So I think that really, empowers me to say, well, what am I doing? And, if I was in that position, would I be as dedicated, or am I as dedicated to my church as these people are? And I have all of these resources to accomplish ministry. They have a fraction of that, but their dedication kind of fills up that gap.
Were you asking about our kids? Like
No, about you yourself.
Oh, yeah. I got nothing. No, I'm just kidding.
I
I was thinking about it from my kids' perspective.
Sorry.
But
Well, you
yeah.
can share that too if you want.
Well, I was just thinking, and I've noticed this as well, but being in different cultures that are more either family-centered or community-centered, our culture is more individualistic, right? So there is the sense that you're welcomed into a community that is going to take care of you, that is going to, basically look out. Everyone's going to look out for each other. And even in our churches in the United States, sometimes that you don't get that feel. You come to a program and then you leave the program, and being able to see that, you know what, in other places, like I can embody this in my own faith community. I can actually, take this person on as a family member. I can host people more often. It's just a different feel that we don't always get to see at least in the church communities I've been a part of here in the U.S.
They're all in, right? They're all in.
Yeah.
They're all
And it's
in.
that belief that I guess I've learned that you want something to change, don't complain about it, do it. Figure out a way to do it. You are the church. You help to build the church. You're not waiting for anybody else. You're going to do it. And so I think that's been monumentally impactful in how I interact and exist now in my own community and in my church. Or you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say that you realize that you're the church. That in addition, as a corollary to that, one of the things that from traveling and interacting so much with world leaders and at so many different places, from the Maasai tribe meeting up, under a tree to the big churches, you realize what a variety there are of believers, what a variety there is of beliefs, what a whole different set of what sin is in different places. I'm not saying there isn't an absolute standard. I'm just saying that the Maasai people who are just discovering cell phones have a whole different set of issues than, what we deal with. That perspective, you go, wow, it would be really hard to lead and to manage a world church. And you also I go to, my goodness, what a interesting job, in a sense, God has to work his freedom of choice and his love through all these different systems, right? And so then, once again, I take it full circle to my own philosophy. That's where we end up coming in many ways. We bring a whole different picture. We're not bringing in a religion per se. We're bringing in trying to solve a need. It could be a church. The Wells are our best example of that. So that it's kind of get a whole different perspective of what it means to be a church, right? It's not about going to Sabbath, although you need that. You need community, but it's about what are you doing for somebody else.
I was going to say that my idea of what it means to be a Seventh-day Adventist. Also, I've seen so many different Seventh-day Adventist congregations around the world that look totally different from what I've grown up thinking a Seventh-day Adventist should be. Someone may list off a bunch of doctrines or theology. This is what a Seventh-day Adventist is. Or they might look at it as sort of a cultural, like, this is what Adventists are, right? But yeah, you worship with a congregation that's in a remote tribe somewhere. Do they have all the same culture, Adventist culture, that I have? Absolutely not. Like, do they have all the theology that I have? Some of them are learning, right? They're learning some of the more nuanced theology. So my grandma, lifelong Seventh-day Adventist, and one of the strongest Christians I know, like she will ask me when I get back, do those tribes, do those congregations, like, are they Adventists? Like, I'm like, it is a Seventh-day Adventist church, and like, just like me, like they're learning and growing, and I mean, even looking at like South American Adventist culture, totally different from our U.S. I mean, there's lots of different cultures,
totally.
Adventist cultures within the U.S. too. But
yeah, I think people get tickled when I tell them tickled. I've never used that word before. People are amused when I say, yeah, like I'll go someplace and they'll serve you meat, they'll serve you beef, but they wouldn't dare drink Coca-Cola. And you know how there's just all of those, or they might have big music with, remember in Brazil, we went to the thing, some convention, and there was just fireworks and just big music and lights, and it felt like you're at this huge concert, but just the most incredible faith-filled experience, right? But that might be something that maybe people in the United States might be uncomfortable with. And so it is interesting in that you have to keep flexing with it. And I think that's the greatest exercise our brain center can do while we travel, is to continue to flex and to empathize and to understand each other and cultural context, and then act within the context that you're in.
Your own, and that's why in my own church, I'm like, yeah, okay. The young people got up there. Dustin got up there with his drums. It's okay,
Way to throw him under the bus.
I'm just kidding. No,
it's percussion.
It's percussion.
Yeah. I think percussion's allowed. But no, going into a Seventh-day Adventist church in India, everyone's taking their shoes off. It's just completely different. And so to me, it's really actually made me love the Adventist church even more, because I just realized there are so many different beautiful expressions of what Seventh-day Adventists are, who they are. And yet you go anywhere around 8, 9, 10, 11 a.m. local time on a Saturday morning, and you're going to find some sort of community that's going to welcome you, and even if you don't speak their language.
Well, and I think even if it may show up in a different way, you get this sense for a family. Like, you get this sense of commonality, even if it's being displayed differently. Even if they're singing different music or the worship style is different, you still feel like, oh, there's something here that is familiar. It may not be tangible, but there's just like this feeling like, oh, I belong here. I'm a part of this.
Kenneth, you have been leading this organization, or helping to lead this organization for a while. How many years did you say?
It's going to be 30 years here in February.
Wow. Yep. What do you think is the most important lesson you've learned while doing this work?
There's a lot of important lessons, especially if you think about where I came from, right? In terms of where we are now. Probably for me, the most important lesson is trusting God. It's very hard to know the future. And when you realize that every single decision that I make impacts hundreds or thousands of other people, and when I realize that every decision to send money into the organization has to be God touching somebody's heart, when I realize that if I'm not committed and aligned to Him, the organization is going to go sideways and not be effective. And I think God has put Maranatha in the planet at this time. We fulfill a very unique role for so many people. It's not just the buildings and the wells. It's that volunteer experience and our commitment to making it something where the volunteer's life is touched. I mean, all three of you know we sat in many, many meetings and we're like, how do we create the right volunteer experience or the right impact? How is there a spiritual alignment that can happen there? And so that's the lesson for me, because if you're going to top graduate school, you got a fancy degree and you get all this education, it's harder to say, you know what, God, I need you every step of the way. So that's the lesson for me. I think it's probably a little bit different for everybody, because my tendency is to be self-sufficient. I can do it. I got it. I got this figured out. What do you mean go work for Maranatha somewhere else? Are you kidding? So that's my lesson.
Destin, in your 8 short
Yeah.
years here.
Biggest lesson. I wasn't thinking you were going to ask me this. Christina, you got something?
I would say it's taught me to be open, and I'm very type A, and so that's good, but you have to also be open, and I think part of it is being open to God leading, but then just being open to receiving from the people that we meet, and just, yeah, I'd say not being so set in, I have this plan, this is what we're going to do, but just planning, but being open to being moved by God, by other people, by experiences. Open.
I don't know. I don't have a great answer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was.
I need to put in at least a decade, I think, to have a really
Okay, we'll
important
come back to you in
lesson.
2
Yeah.
years when
I
you
mean,
reach that 10-year mark.
obviously, like, I've learned a lot of things working for Maranatha that I just had not experienced before. Like, I hadn't traveled internationally really that much before I started working at Maranatha. So all the things that I've already been saying that have impacted me, I think, are probably some of the things that, have stood out the most. So I'm kind of struggling to think
That's
of
okay.
something
Yeah,
else,
we've covered
but,
a lot of ground.
But
I would say for
yeah.
me, I mean, I think there's never been such a strong voice. I mean, every year I work for Maranatha, it becomes more and more the importance of community and building community. And I feel like that's at the heart of what we do. We build a communities of faith, and how important it is to our lives. And I've never understood better for myself what the idea of building the kingdom means. And I see it everywhere I go. And I feel like the structures that we provide, from churches, schools to water wells, are truly strengthening and building the kingdom. And that kingdom of God is that community of faith where, like you said earlier, we're taking care of each other, where you said we're investing in each other. And we're truly doing that in the love that's modeled by God and Jesus. So, well, we all came here not expecting to come here to work for a mission organization. Nobody went to school or grew up thinking that we would do this. Kenneth, in fact, deeply resisted it. But God finds us, and I feel like all of us are called to do this work. And I want to thank you for being on this podcast and talking with us about your journeys. Thank you, Kenneth, especially.
Oh, thanks for the conversation. Good conversation. I learned something about each of you. Good.
We'll do it again.
Okay.
If you're interested in getting involved or learning more about the mission of Maranatha, be sure to visit our website at maranatha.org and check out our volunteer opportunities, watch our show Maranatha Mission Stories, or make a donation. And that's your peek at Inside Missions. Thanks for listening. See you next time.
Nice. You did great.